Welcome to Football Daily, where today we're partnering with Isuzu to look at 10 fiercely contested football rivalries which you might not have heard of. 10. The Super Match of South Korea. Football in South Korea has been growing steadily since the K-League's foundation in 1983, with what started as a 5-team competition now at 15. And one of its most high-profile games is dubbed the Super Match, a fixture involving FC Seoul and Suwon Blue Wings. The game started as a vanity competition between two corporate giants. FC Seoul began life as Lucky Gold Star Football Club, bankrolled by Korean multinational LG, whilst Blue Wings are owned by Samsung. With hefty financial backing, both teams have been successful. Seoul have racked up 6 titles, while Suwon have won 4 out of a total of 35. However, Suwon have the edge in continental football, with 2 AFC Champions League titles, while Seoul have been runners-up in the tournament twice, on the second occasion losing out to the Blue Wings. Suwon Blue Wings are also ahead in the overall tally, winning 35 of the 94 games between the two sides, while Seoul have triumphed in 32 at the time of writing. But with no title since 2008, Suwon are slowly losing their grip on the fixture, making the Super Match one of Asia's tightest and most exciting battles. And as football continues to grow in South Korea, its gravity can only increase. 9. Colo-Colo vs Universidad de Chile. When you've been playing another team since before the Second World War, you can expect to develop some serious beef. And Chilean sides Colo-Colo and Universidad de Chile have 200 plus games and 8 decades of animosity between them. The two Santiago clubs have won 50 domestic titles combined out of a total of 87 and can trace their hatred back to 1940, when Alfonso Dominguez of Colo-Colo punched an Universidad rival after a dodgy tackle. Colo-Colo supporters do have the bragging rights in the derby, with 104 wins to Universidad's puny 62. But the match has been overshadowed by political significance over the years. Authoritarian dictator Augusto Pinochet became honorary president of Colo-Colo during the 70s and 80s, whilst Universidad had a predominantly left-wing fan base, making the derby not just a battle of black and blue, but a fight for the future of Chile. In fact, Pinochet was rumoured to have contributed to the building of Colo-Colo Stadium, something the club's fans still deny to this day, keen to avoid association with a man who murdered over 3,000 of his own people. No wonder the games feel like life and death. 8. Nephew Baku vs Kaiser Lankaran. A modest rivalry, the matchup between these two sides only began in earnest in 2004, but quickly developed into Azerbaijan's biggest derby, known as Buyuk Oyun, or The Great Game. With 8 league titles, Nephew are the most successful team in the country, whilst Kaiser won the league just once. But despite hailing from a city of only 50,000 people, about 1/50th of the size of the capital Baku, they came to represent the south of the nation. Originally good-natured, the game turned bitter in 2005 when the clubs finished level on points at the top of the table. Though Kaiser boasted a plus 53 goal difference to Neftchi's paltry 34, the title was decided by a playoff, which Neftchi won. The next 11 years saw animosity grow until the 2015-16 season, when Kaiser lost 3 of their 4 fixtures with the Giants. They won just 3 times all season and got relegated, whilst their enemies qualified for the Europa League. Their failure was so painful that Kaiser stopped playing senior football altogether, giving up their place in the Azerbaijan First Division and instead focusing on the youth teams. Their decision robs the country of one of its greatest sporting spectacles, though thankfully it also puts an end to the riots and fights which once tarnished a great league. 7. Raja Casablanca vs Vi Casablanca. The Casablanca derby is a bitter one, with class as well as sport coming into play. Wydad is traditionally a middle-class club, whilst Raja has historically taken its fans from among the working class. Both sides are enormous though, with their 2 stadiums having a combined capacity of 160,000 people. That's more than Old Trafford and the Bernabeu put together. Their rivalry started back in 1956 as well, when the Moroccan League first began. And since then, they've played 138 times with a spectacularly boring 61 of those matches ending in a draw. That's 44%. To put that into perspective, only 26% of the Premier League games in 2017-18 ended in deadlock. But the derby has seen its fair share of bloodshed. Sadly, back in 2007, a 17-year-old Vidab fan was crushed when he slipped under a bus outside the stadium. With the emergency services unable to find him as flares had been let off and the police were in the process of arresting more than 400 supporters. 3 years later, another battle in the streets saw more than 100 taken into custody. It seems there are only two predictions you can make about the Casablanca derby. The police will have their hands full and it's gonna be a draw. 6. Sutjens Niksic versus Buduknons Podgorica. Look, I definitely pronounced that wrong, but let's crack on, because looking from a distance, this rivalry seems to only have one winner, as Buduknost have won 49 of the 97 competitive matches between the sides, drawing 28 and losing just 20 times. But despite Sutjeska's terrible historical performance, they have won the Montenegrin First League 3 times. That's the same as Buduknost and have triumphed 5 times in the last 8 grudge matches. Losing on just 4 occasions at home against their foes, Buduknost are the more decorated club, having more of a presence during the old leagues back in 1920 and 1940. And also coming close to lifting the Yugoslav Cup on a couple of occasions. But as the most prominent clubs in the 2 biggest cities in Montenegro, the sides' rivalry extends beyond football, not into politics as you might expect, but into basketball. Both sets of fans follow the 2 sports, but not content to let the games be decided on the court or the pitch, the Ultras began their own deadly competition in the 80s. With Sutjeska's Dukes regularly fighting Buduknost Barbarians. However, even with a different ball, Buduknost again came out ahead, with 11 basketball titles to Sutjeska's 1, and having featured 14 players who went on to play in the NBA. 5. Olimpia vs Real España. The greatest rivalry in Honduran football, Olimpia and Real España face each other in the Clasico Moderno, and have played each other over 250 times. Like many such games, the derby has its roots in geography, with Olimpia the biggest club in Honduras' capital, while Real España reside in San Pedro Sula, the country's second city. Olimpia comfortably lead Real in the head-to-head stats, with 90 wins to Real's 53. But this fixture goes way beyond football, as Olimpia hooligans Ultra Fiel take on the mega barra firm of Real España with deadly results. Honduras has a war-torn history, with more than 8% of the deaths per year coming through violence, making it the 8th most dangerous place in the world, and football hooliganism has definitely contributed to that. In 2016, a pitched battle between armed fans sent several supporters to hospital with gunshot wounds, whilst rock throwing is also a common sight in the Clasico Moderno, with 2 Olimpia players struck with missiles from the crowd in recent years. One of them, Elmer Marin, ended up transferring to Real shortly after. 4. FC Santa Coloma vs UE Santa Coloma. Football Club Santa Coloma and União Esportivo Santa Coloma currently fight it out in the thrilling Andorran Primera Division, with FC taking the last 5 titles on the bounce and 7 before that, whilst UE are yet to pick up their first domestic championship. However, the mere existence of the rivalry is a testament to the progress being made by UE, as it was their title challenge in 2010 that made FC begin to take them seriously. Before that, FC's chief enemies were Sant Julia, the 2-time Andorran champions. But UE have grown into worthy adversaries. Whilst FC remain dominant in the league, UE have established themselves as a power in the domestic cup, winning 2 of the last 3 editions, and on both occasions beating FC along the way. Despite 21 attempts between them, neither side has yet reached the group stages of the Champions League or the Europa League, leaving the derby Andorra's most prestigious fixture. 3. Esteghlal vs Persepolis. In the 84 games between Esteghlal and Persepolis, there have been more draws than wins for either side, and only 2 goals separate them. It really doesn't get much closer than the Tehran derby in Iran. A grudge match since the 60s, the 2 teams have won 19 titles between them, with Persepolis on 11 and Esteghlal on 8. That means they've won more league championships than all the other clubs in Iran put together. And Persepolis looks certain to add more as well, having won the last 2 titles and each time finishing 9 points clear of the competition, whilst Esteghlal are entering their 6th season without a winner's medal. Still, pride remains at stake, with former Esteghlal defender Mohamed Tagavi claiming that sometimes winning the derby is more important than winning the league. And when the game has an average attendance of over 100,000 people, with a further 20 million watching the game on TV in Iran, you can kind of understand his point. 2. Mohan Bagan versus East Bengal. For a country with India's population, it's quite staggering how they're not a force in every sport. But there is one rivalry which draws as much attention as a high-profile cricket match, and it's the Derby of Kolkata, where Mohan Bagan and East Bengal battle it out. With the record attendance of the match being a massive 131,000 people, tensions can get high, and the aftermath of Bengal's 5-0 win against Mohan in 1975 was overbearing. After the game, the Bagan players had to hide in a boat in the Ganges to avoid their own angry supporters, and one young fan even committed suicide after the result, claiming he'd be reborn as a Mohan Bagan player to avenge the loss in a note he left behind. 5 years later in the Eden Gardens, 2 sendings off in the match caused a riot, and a stampede led to the death of 16 supporters. Though there have been dark days in the previous fixtures between the sides, it's still the most popular footballing event in India, and is crucial to encourage more of the country's 1.2 billion population to start playing the beautiful game. Let's hope that in the future it can shed the weight of its traumatic past. 1. Garrison Gunners versus the Woolpack Wanderers. Unless you're a fan of obscure footballing trivia, the rivalry between Garrison and Woolpack is certainly one you've never heard of before. Both of these clubs are based on the Isles of Scilly, just off Cornwall, but what makes this derby and their league so special? Well, they're the only teams in it. When football became popular on Scilly during the 1920s, there were 5 competing teams, pretty impressive on an island of just 2,300 people. But over 3 decades, that number has dwindled to 2. As a result, the Wanderers and the Gunners play each other 17 times a season, facing off every Sunday all the way from November until March. With the league trophy not being enough, there are also 2 domestic cups that the rivals battle it out for. Although this may seem like the ultimate derby, there are concerns that the league might eventually die out, as there's no colleges on the island, meaning that teenagers leave for the mainland and it's hard to find younger players to refresh the lineups. And with the reported age of most of the players being into the mid to late 30s, it might not be long before this rivalry reaches a sad end.
Hope you enjoyed this video, guys. If you want more great football daily content, click there and down there to subscribe. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll catch you later.